Good afternoon. On behalf of MIT and the McGovern Institute of Brain Research, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this amazing session. It's an honor to be on the stage with these three amazing individuals, one of whom I found so amazing I asked her to marry me sometime. That's a conflict of interest reveal. Right? But really, it's an amazing moment, and so I'm so happy to share it with the panel and with you. The structure of this is I'll introduce Professor Davidson, and then he will take over and organize the flowing discussion. Is that okay? And let me say a word. I had oral surgery for cancer a few years ago. My speech is a bit affected. I hope I can communicate reasonably. Just so you know. Okay. So, but it's my pleasure to introduce one of the superstars of cognitive neuroscience, Richie Davidson. He's the William and James Vilas Research Professor of Psychology and Psychiatry, founder and director of the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Madison, Wisconsin, founder and chief visionary for Healthy Minds and Innovations Incorporated. He got his PhD from Harvard, just down the river here, in 1976. He has published over 600 papers, popular books on the emotional life of your brain and altered states, named one of the most 100 influential people in the world by Time magazine, elected to the National Academy of Medicine. And in 2014, Richie founded the nonprofit Healthy Minds Innovations to translate science into tools to cultivate and measure well-being. So I have a bit of a bone to pick with Richie Davidson, which is I've been doing research for quite some time, and everything I do, it turns out he is the pioneer who created that entire field. Okay, this is
not true.
I did some work on emotion in the brain, depression. Who was the pioneer and discovered the most fundamental things about the way our brains organize for emotion, how it's different in depression? Richie Davidson. Some years later, I was involved more recently in studies of mindfulness. And who was the one who practically invented the science of mindfulness in the mind and in the brain in the United States and across the world? Richie Davidson. And now I have this honor to be part of this panel, which I'm very grateful for. But who created the entire dialogue between science and meditation and mindfulness, starting in 2003 with a seminal program here at MIT with Dr. Davidson and the Dalai Lama? Richie Davidson. So whatever you do, you are following in his footsteps, which I'm pleased to have the opportunity, because he's an amazing scientist who is both fantastic in his science and a true humanitarian who wants to make the world better for people. And it's beautiful to have that embodied in a single human being. And with that, Dr. Davidson will take over and run the show.
John, thank you so much for those extremely kind words. I'm really honored to be here. And now is my turn to return the compliments. John has been a hero of mine since I began my career as really one of the greatest cognitive neuroscientists of our time, who has pioneered the study of learning and memory, and his work is extraordinarily broad. And what I love about John is his extraordinary openness to all kinds of phenomena and the creative ways in which he's approached their scientific study. John is the Grover Hermann Professor of Health Sciences and Technology and Cognitive Neuroscience here at MIT, and really has been a leader in the amazing work that's coming out of here. He has taken on the study of mindfulness and related characteristics in a really wonderful way, which I'm sure we'll hear about some this evening. And when we thought about putting this panel together, John with the proviso that it was a conflict of interest, suggested that Susan be included. And I've been a fan of Susan's for so many years, but I actually have not had the opportunity to engage with her in this kind of way, and this was really a welcome gift. Susan is the Tommy Fuss, is that?
Fuss, yeah.
Fuss, endowed chair in precision psychiatry, and a member of the Harvard Medical School faculty, as well as a professor and founding director of the Northeastern Biomedical Imaging Center at Northeastern University. And Susan has been doing some amazing work on applying methods to look at connectivity in the brain and look at individual differences in connectivity as they may inform the specific treatments that we may apply in psychiatric disorders. Susan has also been a pioneer in using feedback from measures of neural activity in creative neurofeedback approaches to address mental illness and promote mental health. And so it's really an honor to have both of you here. And Mingyur Rinpoche has the distinction, I think, of being the monastic on this planet who has spent more time in an MRI scanner than any other monastic. And he has selflessly dedicated his time to be probed and poked in many different ways because of his curiosity about science. His father, Tukul Urgyen Rinpoche, was one of the great meditation masters of the 20th century. And Mingyur Rinpoche learned meditation from his father and his grandfather. And one of the people who was a student of his father's was the great neurobiologist Francisco Varela. And Francisco would be hanging around the family home. And when Mingyur Rinpoche was, I think, 8 years old, nine, first met Francisco and began to learn about and become curious about science from these very early days. And when I first met Mingyur Rinpoche, I will never forget the amazing dialogues that we had. He was the second long-term practitioner that we had in our lab. The first was Mathieu Ricard. Some of you may know who Mathieu Ricard is. He's a French monk by nationality. He also has a PhD in molecular genetics from the Pasteur Institute, where he worked with François Jacob, the Nobel laureate. And so he came with unusual credentials. And then he said that we really have to have Mingyur Rinpoche as the next practitioner. And Mingyur Rinpoche came for about a week, and there was a lot of interstitial time. And so it was then that we first really got to know one another and appreciated his extraordinary interest in science. He is the author of many popular books on meditation. His very first book, The Joy of Living, is the book that I recommend to people as the best introduction to meditation that exists. I still feel that way, even though it was published many years ago, but it is remarkably accessible and just sprinkled with wisdom and also with wonderful scientific tidbits. And let me just finally say that it is wonderful to be here at MIT. We had a meeting in 2003, which was the first public dialogue between scientists and the Dalai Lama. And Phil Sharp introduced the meeting. It was a remarkable star-studded cast, and it really was the launch of contemplative neuroscience. And if you look at a figure that plots the scientific papers on meditation, you will see an inflection point around 2005, soon after that meeting. And I think that meeting had an important catalytic effect in stimulating serious scientific research in this area. So it's great to be back. And so I am serving as sort of a moderator of this panel, and I'd like to begin by asking Mingyur Rinpoche to just tell us a little bit about what meditation is from your perspective, Rinpoche, and also how you think about awareness. Because one of the things that you'll notice if you read Mingyur Rinpoche's work or if you attend his talks is that awareness is a term that he uses much more than mindfulness. And so if you can just say a few words about that, Rinpoche, to begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Richie, and very happy to be here at MIT. And what is the meditation? So meditation meaning to being with the fundamental quality of the mind. So what is the fundamental quality? That capacity that can see, can hear, can experience, can think about pizza. So can you think about pizza? Can you feel the room temperature? Warm or cold? Little bit cold, neutral, right? Can you see my hand? Can you hear? So that's the meditation. So we finished practicing meditation. But, of course, that fundamental quality of the mind, that the lucidity or knowing or experiencing things with us all the time, but we are not meditating all the time, isn't it? Why? Now, just listen to sound or watching my hand becomes meditation. So what we call the view. So view meaning recognize that awareness, the fundamental quality of the mind, that knowing or lucidity quality. Then intention is on purposely being with the object with that awareness. Then become meditation. It doesn't matter what kind of object is, what we call, we can meditate anytime, anywhere, with anything. So that is what we call awareness. But then there's another nowadays very famous about the mindfulness, right? So what is the difference between mindfulness, awareness? Awareness is better. No, so the mindfulness meaning the concentration, on purposely concentrating on something, that's become mindfulness. So mindfulness cannot be with us all the time, right? We lost mindfulness, we forget mindfulness. But awareness with us all the time, the fundamental quality of the mind, the knowing quality. So I have instruction to do little guided meditation. So should we do guided meditation?
Sure.
The bell here, yes. So maybe, let's see, what we call is sound meditation. Maybe I will put this here in my pocket. I think it's okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear the sound? Yes, raise your hand. Now sound meditation finished. Understand or no? Yes? Why? Why? Because when I ask you, can you hear the sound? In that moment, the awareness is with the sound. So ear and mind both listen to the sound, becomes sound meditation. So we don't need to have particular concentration, you know. Or we don't need to stop any thinking. The more you try to stop thinking, you will think more. So therefore, just listen to sound. So please, everybody, keep your spine loosely straight and relax muscles in your body. And the first important is feel the body. So we can feel body through temperature, warm and cold, or heavy, light and heavy sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral sensation. It doesn't matter, just feel the body and relax. Now, please listen to sound. Now you can listen to any sound, sound of air condition, coughing, moving the chairs, anything. And of course, we cannot listen to sound too long. We lost, we forget the sound. It's okay. Whatever thought comes, let them come, let them go. But remember the sound again, again, again. Now, slowly, if you close your eyes, now you can open and relax your mind for a few seconds without particular object. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche. So I'd like to turn now to Susan and John and just begin by asking each of you how you got interested in mindfulness and meditation, and maybe share a little bit about some of the work that you're excited about in this area that each of you has done. And I should say that one of the really fascinating extensions of the work that that Susan and John have been doing is with kids. So I hope you mention that at some point. But we can get to that later too. So please.
Thanks so much. It's a real honor to be here. So I think I first got interested in mindfulness actually when I was younger and went to China and tried to understand mindfulness and Tai Chi and acupuncture. And it's kind of stayed with me. But most recently, I've been interested in mindfulness as a tool to help many people who are suffering from mental illness. And one of the ways we're doing that is to be able to use something we call real-time fMRI neurofeedback. One of the brain networks that's identified to be intimately related to our inner mental lives is called the default mode network. And by default, this network becomes engaged when we're not focused on a particular task. And the two core medial hubs, like if you look at the front of the brain and the medial, and the back of the brain and the posterior cingulate, those two core hubs becomes specifically and selectively engaged when we're thinking about ourselves. We may be mind wandering, engaged in mental time travel. And if we're in a healthy state of mind, we may be just reminiscing about the past or planning for the future. But if we're depressed, reminiscing may warp into rumination. Or if we're worried or if we're anxious, we may be obsessively worried about the future. Or if we suffer from substance use disorder, we may be craving a drink. Or if we're psychotic, we may be engaged in delusions. And we and others have found that this default network becomes more and more engaged with more and more psychopathology. So one of the things that we're trying to do is help people quiet this overactive default mode network. And we've been trying to do this in many different ways. Take depression, for example. There's many different ways from more invasive to less invasive to modulate and kind of quiet down this default network. One way is to go in surgically and do what they call deep brain stimulation, and that quiets down the default network. Another way is to do electroshock therapy, and that also quiets the network. You could also do transcranial magnetic stimulation to the outer part of the brain, and that also quiets down the default network. It's also been shown that SSRIs and ketamine quiets down this overall network. But it turns out that behavioral interventions sometimes, and sometimes lifestyle choices like mindfulness, can also quiet the default network. And we find that it's incredibly good at this. And so for many years, we've been trying all these different interventions, but it wasn't until we tried mindfulness meditation that we were systematically able to help many different patients transdiagnostically. So people who are suffering from chronic auditory hallucinations, people, teens who are depressed and suffering from repetitive negative thinking, say rumination and anxiety, worry, and fear. Mindfulness meditation has been the technique that we tell individuals to use when we're trying to do something called real-time fMRI neurofeedback, and I'll explain what that is. This is a tool that we've developed many years ago to be able to show individuals how their brain activity is being basically by lying in a scanner and observe their brain activity, and we're able to show them how to modulate this voluntarily in real time. And so, of course, we're interested in the default mode network, and so we have them learn mindfulness meditation outside of the scanner. And when they come in the scanner, they're lying down, and we ask them to perform mindfulness meditation. What happens is that we then first identify their own intrinsic default network, and then we basically convert that signal, the fMRI signal, into a game. And they see a ball kind of floating up and down as they're performing mindfulness meditation. And when they're doing it correctly, the default mode network is quieted down, and the ball moves up, which is what they're trying to do. But eventually, their mind tends to wander, and then the default network goes up. So this is basically like training wheels, because it's very hard to learn mindfulness meditation, especially if you're afflicted with a lot of negative thoughts and repetitive negative thinking, and you don't get feedback typically. So the patients are lying in a scanner, and they're seeing how if they practice mindfulness meditation, they can move this ball, they can train their brain to tune their mind. And so what we've seen is that this subsequently reduces auditory hallucination severity as well as mitigates symptoms transdiagnostically. So I think that's kind of what we're most excited at this point.
Yeah, that's really cool. So before we get to John, I just want to turn to Mingyur Rinpoche. What you're describing, Susan, is what I think Mingyur Rinpoche would call monkey mind. So maybe you can say a little bit about how in your teaching, Rinpoche, you would address monkey mind, and if a person was bothered by their monkey mind, how you would give monkey mind a job, as you put it often, or how would you quiet monkey mind?
Yeah, so in our tradition, what we call crazy monkey mind, the mind is talking, blah, blah, yada, yada, and the loss. And that mind also what we call does the opposite. So when we say, think about study or work or whatever. No, not now. I need to look my smartphone. Or if you said, don't think about pizza, then pizza comes. So no pizza, and the more pizza comes. Like sometime in the night, we really want to sleep early, right? I need to sleep. Then what happened? Sleep disappear. So the more you say no, become opposite. The more say you need, feels like fading away, disappear. So that's what we call the crazy aspect, what we call not applicable and workable. So through the meditation, first you make friends with the monkey mind. If you fight with the monkey mind, you lose, No pizza, then more pizza comes. So you have to make friends. Second, how to make friends? What we call, like Richie said, give job. So the job here is the meditation. Monkey mind loves job because the monkey mind has energy, always looking for stimulation. Be quiet, do nothing, monkey mind doesn't like. Need some job. So what is a job? Listen to sound. We did already. And monkey mind says, good idea, sound. Pizza, should I eat tonight? Or what will be my dinner? Should I eat with somebody? Oh, sound. So what we call, don't give full-time professional job to monkey mind. Part-time job. So if you can give job to monkey mind, then who's become boss? You become boss, right? Monkey mind become your employee. You become employer. So what we call, we get the freedom of monkey mind. That's the what we call the real happiness. Not only that, now monkey mind become your friend, so monkey mind become useful. Actually, monkey mind is not bad. It's the relationship between you and monkey mind. So in the end, what we call everything becomes support for awareness, like mindfulness, love and compassion, wisdom.
Thank you. John, please.
Thank you. I think of every infant that's born, every baby that arrives across this nation, across this planet, as being a participant in a neurobiological lottery. That child will be born with genes and into an environment at home, in society, and so on, that will make life easier or harder to navigate. And for those for whom life is harder, we're all eager to make it somehow better and safer and more thriving. And so the reason why we study the brain is to understand how this plays out and what we can do to improve people's lives. In the United States, as you all know, probably all too well, the rates of mental health distress are terrible in young children, in young adults and adolescents. Practically everything you don't want, depression, anxiety, suicidality, addiction, all of those are like 100% up in the last 10 years. For reasons we don't fully understand, but there's a lot of suffering for the individuals, for the people who love them. So we focus some of our work on children, and I'm going to tell you briefly about that. And then another one on young adults, and I'll say briefly about that. I promise to be brief. So when you talk to schools about maybe introducing a mindfulness or awareness into their curriculum, the first response you get is, we have so many problems already, just to get kids to read and do math and turn off their cell phones. We can't get into that. So the one project we did was this. There are questionnaires that have been developed, self-report questionnaires that give you an estimate of a person's mindfulness or awareness. And they've been pretty well developed. So we gave it for the first time to 2,000 children in the Boston school system, ages grades 5 to 8, so middle school. We asked them to self-report their awareness, mindfulness, and then we got information about their grades, their test scores, and their school behavior, suspensions and absences. And what we found were correlations. The more mindful a child was in middle school, the better the child's grades, the better the child's test scores. And schools understand that, and parents understand that. Fewer suspensions and fewer absences. Everything an educator or a parent wishes for their child. So it's compelling to me that this is a way in which we might make many lives better, safer, more successful. We also found, working with a student who had worked previously with Richard Davidson, that during COVID, which was such a stressful period, as children were isolated from classmates and teachers at home alone, that the more mindful they were by this questionnaire, the less anxiety they had, the fewer depressive symptoms they had. We had to do this all online. You couldn't work with people in person. But again, more mindfulness protected these children in an emotionally intense and difficult situation. So, that made me, I was always kind of a fan, but it made me even more of a fan of the value of mindfulness for happiness and safety. Now, those are correlational studies. I'm going to tell you very briefly about 2 causal studies. So if you do a causal study, you have to do a randomized controlled trial, right? Half the people have to be performing mindfulness and half some control condition. So we worked with a school with 8th graders. Half of them, for about a month, received the mindfulness instruction. The other half randomly received, and you're at MIT, this will not surprise you, computer coding instruction, okay? We have to have a control condition the school found valuable, and computer coding is a valuable skill for children, so everybody got something good. And then we compared how they were doing. The kids who got mindfulness, less stress, less anxiety. I'm looking at my key co-author there in the audience. Fewer negative experiences compared to how they were before and compared to the children who got coding. And beautifully, we looked in the brain and found brain plasticity that occurred across time. You know, the mind is what the brain does. This is the brain side of this. And the feelings of stress that children felt, we found that related to plasticity in the human amygdala. And the amount of focus they could have on a task, we found changes in the default mode network, the one that Susan described as well. So these in-school things had this incredible effect of protecting people and enhancing their wellness and practical benefits in academic outcomes. The last study I'll tell you about, we just published on our young adults with autism. Autism is a spectrum. There's a huge range of challenges faced by individuals. We're looking at people who had relatively fewer challenges and were living at home or independently. Half of them did nothing, and half of them used Richie Davidson's Healthy Mind program for mindfulness, which we're super grateful for, his program, okay? On their smartphones at home. And they did it for 6 weeks. And again, we found that the adults with autism with neurodiversity is often challenging for people and how they fit into the world that's not created for them, right? It tends to be high rates of anxiety, high rates of stress compared to the population as a whole. The individuals who used Dr. Davidson's program in mindfulness had significantly reduced stress, fewer symptoms of anxiety, reported more positive experiences and fewer negative. Again, everything you wish for in somebody you care for or love, right? So it was fantastic. And then you may have heard in science, oh, can you really replicate that? So we took the control group, did it with them, exactly the same result. And then 6 weeks later, we said, did it persist, or was it just while they were in the program? 6 weeks later, all the benefits persisted fully. There's one twist in the story, which is, it's not bad. I saw some worry. The twist is this. All these people telling you, all these young adults with a diagnosis of autism, how awesome the program was, how much better their lives are. But because we could track their usage, they agreed to that. Almost all of them stopped the day they could stop, okay? They say, yeah, my life is a lot better, thank you. But, you know, but the benefits persisted at least for 6 weeks, completely. And I think, you know, the way we interpret it, and the way I hear it now, it's not only the practice of mindfulness, as essential as that was for the transformation that occurred in their lives, but it's also the everyday awareness, maybe, that you can employ even when you're not in the midst of mindfulness training, but you've learned to think and feel differently about yourself and the world. And that persisted fully, all these benefits. And so I'm so grateful you know, to the work each of you have done in your own different and powerful way to introduce this idea to our field, which I followed in your footsteps, and we're so excited about the many, many people who might be helped by this incredible way to transform oneself. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, John. It was great to see the publication that just came out, I think, very recently. One of the things that you mentioned, which I'd love to pursue, is the fact that they stopped using the app, and yet the benefits still continued. And one of the things that we've done in some of our work is, as a control condition in randomized controlled trials, we've created a version of the Healthy Minds program with 0 minutes of meditation, no meditation. So for those of you who might be interested, this is an app that's totally freely available. There's absolutely no paywall. It's been created by this nonprofit that we started, so and I've never received a penny from the nonprofit, nor will I ever, so it's ethically clean. So we created a version with no meditation, but in the app there are these short little, you can think of them as mini podcasts about the science and the value of, you can think of it, for those of you who are scientists, as a kind of psychoeducational control. And in the Buddhist framework, we think of it as the view, which is a perspective, if you will. And the closest in psychological research that comes to this, I think, is research on mindset. For example, Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset is an exemplar of that. And Rinpoche, I wonder if you can say something about the view and the possible benefits of simply this shift in perspective that may have been what was producing the more enduring effect that John just described.
Yeah, so normally we discuss about three things: the view, meditation, application. So view begin with the reasoning, like cognitive level first. Then meditation working with the experiential, like feeling. And the application working with the behavioral level, like everyday life. So sometimes, you can begin with this practice only from view, or only meditation, or only application. It depends on the person. So the view here is what we call, everybody has this basic innate goodness. So when I was young, I had panic attacks. That when I developed panic attacks around 7, 8 years old, and 9 become very serious. I thought it's heart attack, I have heart problem. I asked my mom to check many doctors. They all say, your heart is totally fine. I thought, bad doctor. Don't know anything about my heart. But then in the end, I kind of believe that there's no issue with my heart. So I begin to learn meditation from my father. And my first question to my father is, how to get rid of these panic attacks? And he said, don't. Then I said, I will not learn meditation from you. And he said, trust me. And I said, why? And he gave me 2 reasons. The first reason is, like Sam, when we say no pizza, what happened? More pizza, right? So for me, the biggest problem, later I discovered, not that time, but later, the panic of panic, fear of panic, the aversion of panic. So therefore he said, don't fight with the panic attacks. The second reason is no need. And he said, our fundamental quality, that awareness is like sky. There are 3 of them together, actually, not just awareness, love and compassion and the wisdom. 3 unity quality like sky. And my panic attacks is like storm, Sometimes we have tornado, hurricane, pollution, all these things. And these storms can change nature of sky or not. What do you think? Cannot change, right? No matter how strong storm comes, the natural quality of sky cannot be changed, cannot be polluted. So he said, your panic attacks is like storm. But that storm is in the field of awareness, love and compassion, not normal love and compassion, what we call innate love and compassion, and the wisdom. So then I asked him, you're giving me this encouragement. Maybe, I hope it's not just sweet talk, Normally we call it sweet talk. Give me proof. But then he give me teaching step by step how to recognize this inner sky. And based on that, what we call, you don't need to change the storm. What we have to do, connect with the sky. So let storm come and let storm go. So that's the fundamental view, what we call basic innate goodness. Then plus that we learn about impermanence. Life is up and down. Like storm comes and goes. And that also becomes kind of like immune for the problems. And sometimes what we call the up and down is good. Special down moment, because we learn more. So the obstacle may become opportunity, problem may become solution, and suffering may become cause for lasting happiness if we know how to take it as learning process and to grow. So there are so many these views about the meditation. After a certain level, even you don't meditate, this view continued impact.
Thank you. So we've had a little discussion of some of the research that John was describing with children, and we're seeing more and more the application of these strategies in educational settings. And I wanted to just bring up an amazing project that Mingyur Rinpoche is involved with, which is creating schools from scratch in Nepal. And I had the honor of visiting the Tergar school in Kathmandu last year. And actually Justin Kelly is here in the audience, who is directing this whole program for Mingyur Rinpoche. And it's really a grand vision to imbue within all the facets of the education system these qualities of awareness, love and compassion and wisdom, and to teach regular subjects like math and language skills, but to teach them with these qualities kind of manifest, and you really feel it when you're at this school. And it's really, I've visited many schools around the world, and certainly I'm biased in this, but it is really a remarkable school. And I wonder, Rinpoche, if you can just say a few words about it. So I think the audience would really be interested. And I've never seen a school quite like this in the US. And so I think it would be of interest to the audience just to hear about it.
Yeah, thank you, Richie. So I learned these traditional teachings when I was young, that I have these panic attacks. So I feel like this really benefit for me. It's almost like I'm getting immune, kind of like really welcoming the panic attacks. Later, not just panic, life is a lot of up and down, right? So what I call the panic become my friend and my teacher, but then later my teacher gone, but I have another teacher. Life is full of problems. So I was thinking how we can this infuse with the modern education. So there's many schools, they teach different subjects, and sometimes kids don't like this mindfulness, boring, sit there watching this boring, stupid breathing, Why I'm doing this? Though a lot of impact after they are not meditating, thank you, bye, but still impact going on. But that's not really integrating all these things. And then another thing what I see is from this modern education, what we call the view, a lot of view is there, view of impermanent, interdependent, and even emptiness is now getting close. There's some part of basic innate goodness also there, but there's no what we call how to bring this to inner experience, the being with the meditation. And there's no teaching about how to apply in ongoing, lifelong inner transformation. So we are bring this together, these three things, not just intellectual learning, the experiential of this wisdom and the heart, and how to bring into everyday life. So we have this five pillar of the education. So awareness, love, compassion, wisdom, then the result is joy. So hopefully this will benefit many children in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, and this is a school for poor children in the Himalayan region who are, and it's a residential school, who are offered this really amazing education. So, and hopefully there'll be research done with it. So we'll all stay tuned. I'd love to ask Susan and John, both of you have done research where you found value in these kinds of practices. And one of the things that I've been really obsessed with recently is just how we can scale these kinds of methods, and if they're valuable, we certainly, I think most would agree that particularly in the ways we're using them, they have very few negative side effects. In fact, I'm often fond of saying that it's more risky to be in the control group than it is to be in the experimental group. And we've actually empirically documented that in a serious way. So I wonder if you guys have been thinking about that, and particularly the work with children, in just what are your thoughts about that?
Sure, I'm happy to start. So for the mindfulness-based real-time neurofeedback intervention that I mentioned before, we're trying to scale that intervention by simultaneously collecting EEG while the patients are performing the neurofeedback. One of the most satisfying things about training people to do the mindfulness in the scanner is that we're empowering them with agency. So as they're learning to see their brain networks modulate when they're doing the mindfulness meditation correctly, they're gaining more and more empowerment that they can volitionally control their brain and their brain networks and subsequently mitigate their symptoms. So while we're passively collecting the EEG, we can get that as a fingerprint to see how the default mode network is changing. And ultimately, I can see Clemens here in the audience, we're trying to develop something called the Mind Balance Training Platform, where we can track heart rate variability, respiration, EEG, a multimodal assay, if you will, to track in a deep phenotyping way. So we can track variations of mind-body over time. And the way we do that is we look at the default network and we're tracking the EEG at the same time. We can kind of trigger an experience sampling question, say, how are you feeling? And we do that over and over and over and over again so that we can build a predictive model to predict when fluctuations of repetitive negative thinking or the monkey, so to speak. And that way we can trigger just-in-time adaptive interventions. And the EEG is critical to the scaling because then we can couple the EEG with many different ways that people do digital phenotyping to track where people are. Geolocation is often a good predictor of suicidality, the heart rate variability, and EMA, ecological momentary assessment. So if you combine an EEG electrode that can track what's going on between the ears with digital phenotyping and EMA, asking people how they're feeling, then eventually we're hoping to be able to track just-in-time interventions or induce flow states. So that's kind of what we're going to scale that particular intervention. But ultimately, we'd like to get this into schools and scale it in a much broader way.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, John. And just one comment. I wonder if when people are given feedback in a neurofeedback kind of context, and as you say, Susan, they develop more confidence in their capacity to regulate their own mind, I wonder if people who have had that experience may be the ones who may be more likely to continue to engage in an intervention like in the situation you were describing, John, after the formal intervention is over. If a person has more confidence that she or he is able to control their own mind.
Exactly, Richie. And this is what we're seeing. We think we're visualizing actually that mindset switch, because when they say that, when you can actually see the aha moment, right, then that's really empowering, and then they'll be much more open to.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you.
The scaling is really important. Thank you for bringing it up, because we want to have this help many children, the most vulnerable ones, and young adults and adults as well. So schools are obviously a place. We'd like to have it be. We can't make it probably at scale in the U.S., a beautiful school like you're doing. But we might be able to make it part of the curriculum in many schools. And we found very positive findings in that mode. I will say that how that's delivered and how teachers are supported will matter a lot. And I hear this in talking with teachers, that some of them will say, they hand me a booklet and say, make sure you teach mindfulness. Okay? So that's not going to be fair. That's not going to be enough. And they need to be professionally supported. We're all talking about positives. There was a very non-positive finding from the UK on a large scale. Yeah.
This is the Myriad study for those who might know this.
And when I talked to experts about this, they said these teachers were not supported in time and curriculum they were just sort of administering something they were handed without sufficient professional support. So it's not just enough to hand curricula to teachers who are already pretty overwhelmed with stuff. They have to get serious professional support to deliver anything in the universe of what we've heard here before. So I think that's be one thing for schools. The apps is so compelling, the results we and others have gotten with your app. That's totally scalable. Everybody who can, but again, there'll be some challenges because not everybody is in a place where they can use an app, devote time and energy to it. Some people will need other treatments. And as much as we love mindfulness as like beautiful, voluntary, transformational, if a person is too depressed to get out of bed, if they're in a household that's too chaotic, or other things that make life hard, that's not going to be a realistic avenue at that moment. So we have to both spread it as much as possible in a high-quality way and recognize boundaries where it's not going to be effective, and we have to help those people towards something else.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Just to add a little bit to this theme, we just finished a large randomized controlled trial in the public school system in Louisville, Kentucky. These are data we haven't yet published. We randomly assigned about 840 school teachers to the Healthy Minds program, a 4-week intervention, and we had an active control condition. The average engagement in the intervention was approximately 5 minutes per day over the course of 28 days. And we found robust benefit with decreased symptoms of anxiety, depression, and stress, and improvements on measures of well-being. But the real innovation in this study was the following. We had access to the student data, and we were able to look at student academic performance for students who are taught by teachers randomly assigned to the mindfulness or well-being intervention compared to students who are taught by teachers randomly assigned to a control condition. The sample size of the students was about 14,000. And we found that, and the students had no idea that the teachers, there was absolutely no intervention with the students whatsoever. Students had no idea that there was anything going on. And we found that on standardized tests of language ability and math ability, students who are taught by teachers randomly assigned to the well-being intervention performed significantly better than students who were taught by teachers randomly assigned to the control group. And so there was this ripple effect. And it also underscores the point that you made, John, about the importance of training the educators themselves, because that is essential. And this trial that John mentioned, which was done in the UK, is the largest trial of mindfulness meditation that's ever been done in the world at any point in time, and probably the most costly. And there were null findings. And the likely reason for the null findings, in my view, is because of the lack of proper training of the teachers in the way you described. One of the, and I want to turn this back to Mingyur Rinpoche, one of the wonderful opportunities with the Tergar schools is that Rinpoche, among his many projects, has developed a meditation teacher training program that I think is how many? It's 2 years.
One year, right?
1 year.
1 year, yeah.
1 year. This potentially is a great source for teachers who can be really very systematically trained. And I know that for Tergar schools, you guys are thinking about this as a potential pool of teachers who really have had in-depth training to then go on and teach. And so I wonder if you can just comment on this general issue, Rinpoche,
Yeah.
the training of the teachers.
Yeah, so like John mentioned, many places their demand for this mindfulness program a lot, but the teacher doesn't have any experience. Sometimes they teach something not right, like meditation meaning think of nothing, just focus your breath, because they got the book. They don't know what meditation is. Look at the book. Oh, meditation must be think of nothing. Empty mind, empty breathing, empty breath. Only your breath. Don't think about anything else. Then the kids, oh, I'm thinking a lot. What should I do? I'm failure. This is boring. Then it become the side effect. Side effect meaning you become normal loop of the monkey mind. Cannot free from monkey mind, but you make more trap. So that's the happening normally. So then we think, oh, we should really deeper level to really train the teachers. So we give them their own practice. Joy of living, one like awareness, love and compassion, wisdom. Then how to present that with a very fun, joyful, experiential way.
Yeah. So I'm just mindful of time, and we have maybe 15 or a little fewer minutes. We can open it up for questions to the audience. So please, yeah.
Hi, I'm a clinical psych student, and I hear what all of you are saying about patients coming in to discuss mindfulness, and they're already so jaded. Oh yeah, they're already so jaded because I think that they've been taught by teachers who don't fully understand mindfulness from a specific tradition. I think one thing I worry about when I hear about the research, which is so fascinating, is kind of the toolification of mindfulness. The idea of using mindfulness as a means to another end, and like reifying or reinforcing the idea that like we're using mindfulness to be smarter, more efficient, better than other kids, or something like that. And I wonder if you guys have something to say on that account. I just feel like the society is so much about earning your worth. And I'm worried that mindfulness is just a means to an end to earning more worth rather than being nobly born from the beginning. And just wondering about that.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone want to take that on?
Okay, so what we call the mindfulness is neutral. It helps our mind become calm, peaceful, and pliable and walkable. But at the same time, it's very important that intention. So therefore, what we call three things always: awareness, love, and compassion. The second thing is, but if you use the wrong way, could be not positive, your mind become very sharp, like you become soldier, good at shooting with the mindfulness. Possible. But if you use mindfulness with the right intention, of course, after the mindfulness practice, your mind become more calm and easy to develop love and compassion. Then use the wisdom. So these three things together, then really nice.
And one of the important things in the way Mingyur Rinpoche teaches in his tradition, when we learn meditation, when we put our butts on the cushion, we always invoke the intention that we're doing this not primarily for our own benefit, but actually for the benefit of others. It is embedded from the very get-go within an altruistic intent that if I have a calmer mind and a warmer heart, it's not only beneficial for me, but it's beneficial for all those that I touch. And so that is so deeply embedded in the way this is taught. And I think that helps the kind of issue that you're describing, which I think is real.
Thank you very much for the discussion. I really enjoyed it. I have a question that I go personally back and forth between these two. I was wondering, do you think mindfulness like a natural state, or is it like something very human? Like like does do animals are animals mindful? Like, is a dog mindful? Is a cat mindful? Or is it something that is really unnatural and cognitively higher order thing that we are imposing, and it's completely on the other side of the spectrum?
What we call everything has a mindfulness. Every what we call sentient being has the mindfulness, but there is capacity to recognize mindfulness and being with the mindfulness. That not sure. So that is the difference.
And I think psychologists or neuroscientists would, I think, use the term meta-awareness to describe that. Yeah, do you guys want to comment?
I have no idea. It's a great. Sorry. No, it's a beautiful question. It's so hard to, in many ways, imagine the inner life of non-humans, right? So I have. It's a fascinating question.
Okay, please.
So I'm a health services researcher, and I work.
Closer.
Okay, I work primarily in the behavioral health space, and one thing that we have used a lot when it comes to interventions is, and I did my postdoc in implementation science. We've used a huge amount of implementation science to, you can have the best intervention in the world. If you can't implement it, the study in England obviously being a good example of that, then it's worthless, right? So have you guys thought at all about utilizing implementation science models to try and implement these types of things? And I feel like there's also a place for mindfulness when it comes to those models, and I don't think those models have really been informed by mindfulness, but I think that there's some really interesting and fruitful work that potentially could happen there. So I'm just wondering if that's something you guys have considered, and yeah.
I'm a huge fan of implementation science because all these ideas, mindfulness or improvements in reading skills, all of those, anything in mental health, it all comes down to how it's implemented, as we talked about with the teacher preparation. Part of my life I work on dyslexia and reading and literacy. That's a huge issue too, not just tell teachers, get everybody reading, right? But to give them a curriculum, a support, a professional thing that lets them teach reading in the most effective, the best way for the most children. So I think it'd be great for us to think more about that, because as we just discussed, all this amazing stuff, if it's not implemented well by clinicians, by teachers, by parents, it won't help people. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to comment, I also am a big fan of implementation science, and we think about that a lot. And these days we're doing, large randomized controlled trials with thousands of people. So the implementation science work is really central to that. And I also very much agree with your intuition that implementation science itself may benefit from some of the ideas that we're talking about, and we've been really thinking about that. So my sense is that there'll be some innovations in that space in the next few years. Yeah.
Hi. So the study you published on autism with meditation, did you consider extending it to people with ADD or dyslexia, both in the classroom and in day-to-day life?
We haven't done that yet, but we're very active doing research on dyslexia and ADHD, and we're super eager to do that. So thank you. Yeah, it's hard to do science as fast as one wants to, but absolutely, because I think both of those challenges, ADHD and dyslexia, is full of many of the issues we talked about, with an extra challenge for a person in terms of attention, in terms of self-regulation, in terms of reading. And I think we're super eager to do that, just haven't done it yet. Yeah.
So I have a question. I'm a postdoc in brain research. So I have a question for Susan. Default mode network is also called task network, which means there is no like a visual stimuli, auditory stimuli, and you focus on in the mind, something like that. I'm wondering, what's the fundamental differences in the like meditation compared to other tasks, like if you give a visual stimuli or auditory stimuli, watching a movie, for example, in the scanner, and then I assume the default mode network will also be compressed or suppressed during the movie watching. What's the fundamental difference between movie watching versus a performing meditation?
Thanks so much for that question. It's a fabulous question, and we've been thinking about this quite a lot, because anytime you are focused your attention on a particular task, that also suppresses the default mode network. So what's so special about mindfulness? So we're in the process of actually looking at that, because we notice that if you count backwards from 7 or something like that, you're also engaged in an attentional process, which will suppress the default network. But what happens is we find that if you engage in mindfulness meditation and focus on the present moment without any rehashing of the past or worrying about the future, that has extra benefits. And that when you target this large-scale network, you're not only downregulating the network by mindfulness meditation, but you're also downregulating regions that are functionally correlated with it, that are specific to symptoms related to specific conditions. For instance, with mindfulness, when you downregulate the default network, you're also downregulating the auditory cortex in schizophrenia, which then basically imbues self-relevance to the hallucinations, but it downregulates those hallucinations. And in the case of depression, you're not only downregulating the default mode network with mindfulness, but you're also downregulating its correlation with the subgenular anterior cingulate, which then reduces internalization and anxiety and depression. So my view, though we haven't published it yet, is that any attention-demanding task, yes, it will suppress the default mode network, but the act of doing mindfulness meditation will actually do much more, because it will, by the act of the mindfulness, will actually have these other clinical benefits.
My question is for Rinpoche. You mentioned something about during the anxiety attack that the task was to connect to the sky. And I wonder, I would just love to hear just a little bit more about that, either for the anxiety attack or just even in meditation. Can you tell us a little bit about the technique to connect to the sky?
Yeah, so the first is we need to have introduction of these innate qualities, right? So I kind of introduce the awareness, which is knowing quality, the fundamental quality of the mind. So we talk about like flame, like candle flame, that has two luminous aspects, self-luminosity and other luminosity. So self-luminosity meaning the flame is the light. So if you want to see the flame, we don't need to use flashlight to look at the flame, because flame is the light. If you want to see the watch, then we need to use external light, right? So our mind has that self-luminous aspect. But that self-luminous is beyond concept normally. The problem is you cannot really grab it by thinking mind or conceptual mind. How to get there is by being. So what we can experience that self-luminous mind, but we cannot really find self-luminous by cognitive or intellectual way. So therefore, this practice, the first practice is we can connect with the other luminosity. Other luminosity meaning you can see my hand. My hand is not your mind, but your mind can see my hand. You can hear the sound, the knowing or experiencing sound, smell, taste, bodily sensation, thought, emotion. So the view is the idea of that self-luminosity and the natural quality of the mind, that knowing quality is just view. Then being with that sound. So the intention that I want to be with the sound through meditation, then automatically that intention brings view. So then just by listening is the way to connecting with the fundamental quality of the mind, the inner sky. So the real inner sky is that self-luminosity. And then we have innate love and compassion. Then there's the innate wisdom. So normally we have this introduction step by step. So today I now mention more about awareness, but you can explore this feature. Yep.
So I maybe we can take one more question and then okay. Quick questions.
I work as a middle school nurse, and this past weekend there were school nurses from all of New England meeting for our conference. There's a lot of discussion about the mental health of all of our students from pre-K up to high school. I would just say we would love to be able to support your work as both an intervention or a study, so we'd be happy to volunteer.
Thank you. Maybe last question. Last two.
Man, I wish I had a quick question for you. My name is Ben Painter, and I help run an organization that supports mindfulness in schools. We're called Whole School Mindfulness, and we fund mindfulness programs in schools and support the teachers. And so I really appreciate everything that you've said tonight. And my question is, what advice would you have for organizations trying to navigate this space right now when this administration is targeting social emotional learning, DEI, mindfulness programs? What's the advice for these times?
I mean, I'll be happy to start. One of the I mentioned this project that we did in Louisville, Kentucky. We went into Louisville because we wanted to. No one would believe anything we did in Madison, Wisconsin. We needed to do it in a different, more diverse, more complicated school system. And one of the unexpected champions of the work that we were doing, in fact, our most significant champion, who ended up being the most helpful in terms of recruiting the teachers, was the president of the teachers union. Because of the mental health of the teachers, in data we've collected and also data that other scientists have collected, we found that among public school teachers today in the United States, 50% of teachers are showing clinically significant symptoms of depression and or anxiety. I mean, it's frightening that these are the folks who are teaching the next generation. And I think if we appeal to basic issues of mental health and the education of the next generation, I aspire to think that this is a bipartisan issue. And so I think if we stay at that level, I think we can still make some progress despite the challenges that we're all facing. You want to?
I don't want to go too much into politics. Different people have different views. I will say, from the viewpoint of mental health and science, it's an unbelievably challenging moment. And it's hard to know how it's going to go. At one level, you could say we need mindfulness more than ever. But in terms of the reality of resources and public policies, I mean, I'm as lost as you are on where we're going, and hope that somehow a lot of good people will somehow steer us in the right direction. I don't have a better answer than that, but I share your concern about many of the values we talked about now don't seem to be as supported societally wide as we wish.
Okay, last question.
Estimated legit. My name is Arya. I'm a golf athlete. Usually when I go to tournaments after I hit my shot, I recognize that I sometimes have mini panic attacks. But at the exact moment, how do I calm my mind, especially when I need to perform better in my next move? Could you please advise?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. So exact that moment, you need to do deep breathing. Just relax muscle in the body. And then relax a little bit for a few seconds in between the breathing. Then another deep breathing. So maybe you should do 7 to 10 times. That immediately that time helps. But normally, also you can think about don't fight with the panic attacks. Try to make friends with that. And then the breathing meditation or music. Do you like listen to music? You can listen to music meditation. Not need a lot every day, like 4 to 5 minutes regularly. And then anywhere, anytime, short time, any times. And do some physical exercise. Also, aerobic exercise time to time is good for panic attacks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan, John, Mingyur Rinpoche, and thank you all.